alleged argument between Harry and the late Queen in 2018. Here is Phil Dampier, seasoned royal biographer and journalist, explaining the relationship between Bedell Smith and Lady Anson and the Queen.
It was the roast that rocked Montecito, and Prince Harry never saw it coming. Graham Norton, beloved across the UK for his sharp wit and fearless charm, aimed his sights on the Duke of Sussex and pulled the trigger. What was supposed to be a cheeky monologue on late-night television turned into a cultural earthquake, shaking the foundations of Harry's public image and sparking an international reckoning with who he's become. But the most shocking part? He wasn't even in the room. Before we dive into the emotional meltdown that followed and the brutal punchlines that went viral, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we're unpacking what might be the most humiliating takedown of Prince Harry since he walked away from the crown. So how did it all begin? With a single line, Harry's done more interviews in 5 years than the Queen did in 70. The audience burst into laughter. It was fast, brutal, and impossible to recover from. In just one sentence, Norton captured a growing global sentiment that Prince Harry, the so-called rebel royal, had transformed into something much less admirable. A man addicted to the sound of his own voice, and the blows kept coming. Norton didn't need Harry sitting next to him. In fact, the empty chair was more powerful. It symbolized the ever-growing gap between Harry and his homeland, between the man he was and the influencer he's become. The crowd wasn't just laughing at a punchline, they were laughing at a mirror. A reflection of the man who left the royal family to escape the spotlight, only to become one of its most obsessive users. Then came the nickname, the Duke of Netflix. It exploded online. 3 words that encapsulated years of public frustration. Graham said it plainly: Harry left the firm. But he didn't leave the titles. Instead, he cashed them in. Memoirs, documentaries, podcasts, explosive interviews. The world watched as Harry turned his trauma into content. And Norton turned all of that into one cutting, unforgettable punchline. Back in Montecito, the reaction was volcanic. Insiders say Harry stormed out of his office, phone in hand, shouting, "They're all turning on me." He ranted for hours. He demanded his PR team act immediately. One staff member said he looked absolutely livid, pacing the halls, slamming doors, barking orders. For a man who often claims he wants peace, Harry seemed more rattled than ever. Why? Because this time, it wasn't a tabloid smear or a palace leak, it was satire, public, brutal, and impossible to stop. And Meghan? She wasn't laughing either. Sources say she watched the segment in stunned silence, not angry, strategic. According to people close to the couple, Meghan was visibly tense. She knew the damage. She knew this wasn't just about a feud, was a reputational crisis. One she couldn't spin away with an interview or an Instagram post. One source even claimed she told Harry he lost control of the story and made them look weak. While Montecito melted down, Buckingham Palace was reportedly calm, even amused. No public statements. Of course, that's the royal way. But behind the scenes, a quiet satisfaction. One royal aide reportedly said, "It's not revenge, it's revelation." People are seeing him for who he is now, and Prince William. According to insiders, he wasn't surprised in the slightest. Harry's tantrum, it seems, only confirmed everything the firm had suspected. The timing couldn't be worse for the Sussex brand. Their media deals, once seen as revolutionary, now feel tired and self-indulgent. Netflix is watching. Spotify already walked away. Meghan's lifestyle brand is floundering. And now, late-night comedy, a medium that once celebrated their rebellious charm, has joined the chorus of critics. Worse still, American outlets like The View and Entertainment Tonight are turning. Commentators who once defended the couple are now asking, is Harry spiraling? Is the narrative collapsing? When even liberal media begins to ask those questions, the echo chamber is breaking. And here's the twist. This all happened because Harry wasn't there. He wasn't ambushed, he wasn't misquoted. He was simply mentioned, and that alone was enough to trigger a meltdown. What does that tell us about the man behind the brand? Graham's final blow came wrapped in one line. At least William kept calm and carried on. Harry just kept complaining. The crowd erupted and the internet followed. For years, the public had drawn quiet comparisons between the two brothers. But now, Norton said it out loud. One brother embodies quiet duty. The other, loud discontent. One walks into crisis zones. The other walks onto Oprah's set. And that comparison hurt more than anything. The moment Graham Norton's show aired, the clip surged like wildfire across the internet. TikTok loops, YouTube shorts, Twitter reels, it was everywhere. The hashtag Duke of Netflix trended within hours, and people couldn't get enough of watching Harry being taken down with surgical comedic precision. One insider described him as pacing like a caged animal. He was furious that the world was laughing and not with him but at him. That matters because for all the talk of stepping away from royal duty, for peace, Harry's behavior since has screamed anything but. This was Graham Norton, a cultural icon in Britain. Someone who isn't easily dismissed as sensational or cruel. If anything, Norton is known for being playful, cheeky, even charming. So when someone like him delivers a takedown, people pay attention. It hits differently. That's what made it so powerful. Norton didn't just mock Harry, he diagnosed the public mood. "I used to feel sorry for him," he quipped. "Now I just feel tired." That line echoed across social media like a thunderclap. It captured what millions had been quietly thinking. Harry's story had worn thin. His pain, once relatable, now felt monetized. The endless stream of grievances, media appearances, and contradictions had finally caught up with him. And Harry had no defense. Palace leak to blame. No British tabloid to sue. Just a few well-aimed jokes from a talk show host, and the world saw a different side of him. Vulnerable, yes, but also fragile, thin-skinned, and dangerously reliant on controlling his narrative, because that's what this is really. About control, Harry and Meghan have spent the last 5 years trying to dominate the story. With Oprah, with Netflix, with podcasts, with memoirs, but satire. It reminds the public that the truth often hides between the lines and sometimes in the punchlines, and what a contradiction it exposed. Harry left the royal family claiming he wanted out of the spotlight, but he's been chasing it ever since. Graham Norton didn't have to say it directly because the audience could fill in the gaps. The Netflix deals, the ghost-written memoir, the endless interviews, the stage-managed vulnerability, all of it clashing with the image of a man crying out for privacy. Even Meghan, always the strategist, reportedly recognized the danger. Sources say she saw immediately what this meant. The brand was slipping. The narrative was no longer theirs. Public opinion was shifting. Even once loyal American fans were beginning to feel the fatigue. And in private, she wasn't gentle with Harry. She reportedly told him he looked weak for overreacting. That silence was smarter. But Harry didn't listen. A roast it was a reckoning. It forced people to ask, what has Harry actually become? A spokesperson for mental health? A truth teller? Norton's jokes didn't answer those questions, but they forced them to the surface and that's what made them so dangerous. And yet, in the UK, there was a sense of vindication. For years, the royal family kept their silence. Through Oprah, through Spare, through Netflix, no statements, no retaliation, just quiet endurance. And now the world was catching up. Not through press briefings or interviews, but through laughter. One royal aide reportedly said it best. Let him speak. The more he speaks, the clearer it becomes. In other words, the firm's silence had always been their greatest weapon. Harry's oversharing was his downfall, and now that contrast was sharper than ever. Prince William, for his part, remained silent. But insiders say he was well aware of the Norton monologue and privately, unfazed, because he doesn't need to fight this battle, the public is doing it for him. Graham Norton, with a few jokes, had succeeded where royal PR teams had struggled for years by turning the tide of perception without a press release. And it's not just public perception that's shifting. Executives in Hollywood are paying attention. Netflix, once proud of their deal with the Sussexes, is now reportedly concerned about their brand value. Spotify walked away and now other platforms are reconsidering. Because drama may sell headlines, but it doesn't sell trust. And trust is what they're losing fast. Fan pages that once defended Harry now sit silent. Commentators who once praised him now hesitate. Even allies in American media have started to question the endless cycle of grievances. One late-night host reportedly joked, at least when the Queen had a bad day, she didn't storm out of Buckingham Palace. Lighthearted maybe, but telling because if late-night comedians in the US are starting to turn, it means something deeper has shifted. And here's the cruel twist. All Harry had to do was nothing. He didn't even have to appear on the show. He didn't have to respond. He could have laughed it off, shrugged, or better yet, ignored it. But his reaction, explosive and emotional, confirmed every criticism. He couldn't take the joke. And that reaction, more than anything Norton said, became the real story. The prince who wanted to control the narrative had lost it, and the world was laughing. As the dust settled in Montecito, the silence from Harry's camp became deafening. No public response, no clever deflection, no carefully worded statement. Just a closed door, a shattered phone, and a man grappling with a reality he didn't want to face. The public had moved on. Once hailed as a modern-day Dynamis, understood, mistreated, and maligned, Harry now finds himself painted with a different brush, entitled overexposed and emotionally volatile. And it's not just the British press saying it. It's mainstream comedians, American audiences, former fans, and most damning of all those who used to root for him. Because here's the truth. Graham Norton revealed without ever saying it outright. The problem isn't the media. It isn't the palace. It isn't the public. The problem might be Harry. The man who once symbolized quiet rebellion is now seen as a walking contradiction. He preaches privacy while selling memoirs. He denounces the royal system while using its titles to secure multi-million-dollar deals. He demands compassion but offers little in return. And when faced with a bit of harmless satire, he doesn't laugh. He breaks. That's not strength, that's fragility. And audiences can sense the difference. In some ways, Graham Norton did Harry a favor. He gave him a wake-up call dressed as a comedy bit. A moment to step back, reflect, and possibly reset. But judging by Harry's reaction, that opportunity may be lost. Meanwhile, the palace watches, silent, steady, and increasingly vindicated. For every tell-all interview, for every teary podcast, they've offered nothing but composed silence, and the public is beginning to understand why. You don't win loyalty with oversharing. You earn it with consistency, humility, and grace under pressure. 3 things Harry seems to have misplaced. And then there's Meghan. For her, this wasn't just a personal embarrassment, it was a branding disaster. Her entire public image relies on control. Control of the message, control of the optics. And suddenly, all of that collapsed in one 10-minute comedy segment. That's why, insiders say, she sat there in silence, because she knew the wave had turned, and once it does, you can't just pivot back. Sources close to the couple suggest there's growing tension between the two. Meghan allegedly sees Graham Norton's roast not as a moment of offense, but a strategic failure on Harry's part. She's frustrated that he continues to react emotionally instead of strategically, that he plays the victim instead of the chessboard, and that, once again, a golden opportunity to own the narrative slipped through their fingers. Because there's a version of this where Harry could have laughed, could have posted a cheeky tweet, could have joked about it in an upcoming appearance, and in doing so, could have turned the tide back in his favor, but instead he raged, and that rage confirmed every criticism. It's a pattern, and patterns, once spotted, are hard to unsee. What's next for Harry and Meghan? That's the million-dollar question. Their Netflix contract is still in place for now, but projects are reportedly being re-evaluated. Meghan's lifestyle brand continues to stall. Public support in both the UK and the US is at its weakest point in years. And even their defenders seem exhausted because the public didn't turn on them for speaking out. They turned on them for never stopping, for turning every slight into a scandal, every disagreement into a documentary, every bump in the road into a moral outrage. It stopped feeling authentic and started feeling performative, and that's what Graham Norton exposed with just a few laughs. He didn't destroy Prince Harry with cruelty. He dismantled him with honesty, wrapped in humor, powered by truth, and witnessed by millions. Prince Harry thought walking away from the monarchy would set him free. Instead, it's made him a prisoner of perception, a man forever chasing sympathy, but increasingly met with skepticism. And the saddest part? He doesn't seem to know how to stop. If there's any chance of redemption, it won't come through another podcast or media tour. It won't be found in a new Netflix docuseries or a second memoir. It'll come from stepping back, from showing humility, from letting actions, not interviews, do the talking. But for now, all we see is the fury, the pacing, the silence, the headlines, and in the middle of it all, a red chair on a talk show in London that echoed all the way to California. Graham Norton never had to raise his voice. He didn't need a stage full of props or a screaming audience. Just a few carefully crafted jokes, a knowing smile, and the courage to say what millions were thinking. Prince Harry wasn't even in the studio, but somehow he was the loudest voice in the room. And now, as the laughter fades, the message remains. If you can't take the heat, maybe don't light the fire. Thanks for watching. If you want more raw truth, sharp commentary, and stories the mainstream won't touch, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. We're just getting started.